You've arranged to meet somebody, but you misunderstand the time phrase and don't turn up when they expected. You're left there standing high and dry with no Germans in sight, or even worse, they are there, waiting to cast one of those withering Teutonic frowns at your failure to be pünktlich. Let's make this awkward scenario a little less likely to happen to you by calling time, one by one, on 3 all too easy to make Uhrzeit blunders, with a generous sprinkling of super useful examples. Illustrative, pre-packed, ready-to-use building blocks, or as I like to call them, fluency phrases. So, blunder, or should I say Fehler, Nummer 1. Here's a first fluency phrase. Wir treffen uns 8 Uhr. Now you could be forgiven for thinking that they mean they'll meet round about 8 o'clock. After all, when we're talking about location, so space rather than time, does often translate as about or round about. Die Bushaltestelle ist gleich die Ecke.
Die ganze Familie sitzt den Tisch herum.
But passt auf. When it comes to time, means not around, but at. So, 8 Uhr is as precise as you can get. 8 Uhr beginnt die Besprechung. Also sei bitte pünktlich. If you want to say we're meeting around 8 o'clock, you need to use not but gegen. This again might come as a surprise because when you're talking about spatial relationships, gegen often means against. Der Fisch schwimmt gegen die Strömung. A fluency phrase with gegen to illustrate approximately a certain time? Well, how about wir treffen uns gegen 8 Uhr im Café, aber es ist nicht schlimm, wenn du etwas später kommst. Make sure then that you clock the differences between gegen a certain time and a certain time. Woe betide you if you think that gives you more than a few milliseconds leeway before or after. Before we look at a second common Fehler bei der Zeitangabe, take note that you can get my fluency phrases Tell the Time in German cheat sheet by following the link underneath this video. Lasst uns zusammen besser in Deutsch werden. Fluency phrase by fluency phrase. Also, Fehler 2. When you're telling the time in German, it's important to retain a certain Zukunftsorientierung. Eh? Well, in English, we often say it's 3:30 when we mean it's 3:30, 3:30. We're referring back to the top of the previous hour. Germans, however, will sometimes surprise us by referring forward, in die Zukunft, to the next hour. So, in German, es ist 2:30 implies that we've already got halfway towards the upcoming future hour. It's as if the idea is half of the way to 3. So it's actually only 2:30. If you want to say 2:30, a direct translation from the English here, so es ist 2:30, would be wrong. Ich stehe jeden Morgen 7:30 auf. For 4:15, it's normal to use the same system as in English, so it's 4:15 is es ist 4:15. But you can also, less commonly, use the forward-looking system. Es ist 4:05. So a quarter of the way to 5. In the same way, for a quarter to the hour, es ist 4:45 would be most common. But you can also say, es ist 3:45. It's 3/4 of the way to 5. In a further twist in the plot, for 25 minutes past or to the hour, you can also tell the time with reference to the half-hour point. So if it's 1:25, you can say, es ist 1:25. But you can also say, es ist 2:05. Literally, it's 5 to 1:30. In the same way, instead of saying, es ist 3:25, for it's 25 to 3, you could also say, es ist 3:05. So, Fehler 2 is misunderstanding these permutations on halb and friends. Keep calm and look to the top of the upcoming hour. If you want to learn more about telling the time in German, then do check out my Telling the Time playlist by clicking on this link, wherever it is. Now, when I was a kid in rural Yorkshire, I got very excited when they started to teach us the 24-hour clock at school. It seemed so technical, modern, even exotic. Because in Britain it's only really used for train and plane journeys. There were no stations in my area and my parents refused to fly. So I never actually got to use it very much until I went off to college, and that entailed a 5-hour train journey. But That brings me to Fehler 3, the third time trap in German. Not being all over the 24-hour clock. Here's the thing, the system is much more frequently used in the German-speaking lands than just in relation to transport schedules and the like. It's common for announcing the times of plays at the theatre, radio or TV shows. Even in everyday conversation. Maybe that's because there's no direct equivalent of AM and PM to use with the 12-hour clock in German. Of course, you can add früh or nachmittags, or heute Abend, morgen Abend, and so on, instead of AM and PM, but whatever. It's 3 PM could either be es ist 3 Uhr nachmittags or es ist 15 Uhr, and you need to recognise both. Say you want to confirm that you're meeting a friend at the theatre for a play at 7:30 tomorrow evening. You could say, remembering the Zukunftsorientierung from Fehler 2, das Theaterstück beginnt morgen 7:30. But you need to be able to switch yourself on to 24-Stunden-Modus at a moment's notice when you hear das Theaterstück beginnt morgen 19:30 Uhr. You're going to find the 24-Stunden-Uhr system a bit harder if you can't do this readily in English to begin with. That's a particular challenge for you Americans, I think, because you guys seem to use the 24-hour clock even less than we do here in the UK. Grab my fluency phrases, tell the time cheat sheet, link underneath, and don't get beaten by the clock in your German.